So people on that's coming through all right, so that looks all right. All right. Good evening. Welcome to the last AEVA Queensland meeting for the year, November. Thank you all for coming along. We've got a very good lineup tonight, so we might just get packed program. Let's kick off. Any new people here? Couple. Two of the speakers, that's handy. All right, so just if you do need to use the toilet, it's just down the hallway there. Most of you I saw signed in, so that's lovely. Tonight I'm going to do my normal thing, then we're going to have Dom from Vaulta talk about his business, David from EV Charging Australia talk about his business, and Nathan has taken on a Lotus Europa project and he's going to give us a chat about that. Because we have to hold sales talks for January 2023, right? All right, infrastructure, my favourite. Okay, what's that?
You can't have enough of it.
I can't have enough of EV charging. All right, it's dark enough. Okay, so each month I go through the free charges. You guys probably know the deal. The Kelvin Grove Library is at 60% speed. The Gardens Point is at 60% speed. The St Lucian one they installed last month is fully operational still, still copying and hammering, but the Kelvin Grove Stadium one's offline. But there's a new free charger around and I'll get to that in a minute. Oh, here it is here, straight away. That's handy. Who put this presentation together? All right. So I did do a video about this for anyone who follows me on YouTube, but the twin BPs up at Caboolture, or technically Murrayfield, this is the northbound side. BP have put in their first charger, and I'm going to go through a few little bits and pieces about it, but it's a very good site, and they've put in a 75 kilowatt charger, but it's in a 150 kilowatt charger shell. There is going to be one on the opposite side, on the southbound side. So whether you're travelling to the Sunshine Coast or coming home, you should have another option. And just one other quick note, they're putting one in at Bribie, that's in progress. I've just got a couple of slides on this list, so we'll just go through them. So here's North Lakes, where we've had a couple of EV meets, and there's Coochin Creek, where we've had a couple of EV meets, and here's the twin BPs in the middle. So it's a very busy traffic spot, so I'm sure that's going to get high utilisation. Just after the bridge at Ballara is where they're going to build that other BP one. This is what the charger looks like. Now, what have I got? Oh, it's free at the moment, but it's going to be 55 cents a kilowatt hour, is what's been advertised. If you can just go to the next one, Liz. I just wanted to give a quick rundown, a very, very quick rundown, because you know how much I love chargers and stuff, but I do refer to this terminology sometimes, and not everyone is aware, but these are the ones like at the Queensland Government website, Queensland Government sites, like Hamilton, North Lakes, Logan IKEA. They're the 50 kilowatt and they're RT for retail areas, generally speaking. Tritium brought out the next one, which is the RTM. So what you can see is this is the one they installed, why I've done this slide, this is the one they installed at Caboolture. And it's the PKM, not the RTM. But they're essentially very similar. But this one has thicker cables to allow for higher speed. And it has a different internal setup. And this is what we have up at Coochin Creek, which is the PK 350. So anyway, if you ever hear me refer to the RTs or the PKs, then I guess you'll understand that they're the slower ones, they're the faster ones. Just very quickly, this is the inside of an RTM. So it has the three modules And in the newer one that's been installed at BP at Caboolture, it has 6 modules. And this is, why I'm getting to this is that they've installed the 150 shells with only 3 of these modules on the inside, which means that you can only get 75 max, even though they're saying up to 150. They can later on come along and put more of these modules in and give you higher speed. So it's more about the current, and you can correct me if I'm saying anything wrong, but the charter mode gets 125 on this one, and the CCS gets 200 on this one. They get 350. I think it's 200 on the charter mode, but if 2 cars are charging, they'll get 200 each if it's at the 150 module. Now I learned something interesting today, and that's they have to set up the modules so that if 2 people are charging, 1 car is biased, and that's the CCS is always going to be biased. So someone posted on the video I put on YouTube, I was at the BP getting a charge in my Leaf and I was getting 35 kilowatt, and then a Model Y came and started getting, plugged in, and he started getting 47 kilowatt and I went down to 25. So what happens is it shares the 3. The Chartamo is biased to drop off one of the modules and it gets a max of 25, and then the other one will get the 50. I had a little secret for you guys, and that's if these are both CCS plugs, use the right one, because they're still the same thing happens whether it's both CCS plugs. The left-hand one will be 25 limited and the right-hand one will be, so you'll be there charging away, getting 50 kilowatt in your Hyundai, and then someone comes and plugs into the right one, they'll start getting 50 and you'll get 25
Is that right as you look at it? Or is it the right one as you stand behind it?
right, just go back one slide. Just remember the Chartamo's on the other. Can you go back one? Yeah, so Chartamo's there and CCS is there, so just stick to the same side. Don't change, people, don't change. All right, go for it.
The power numbers quoted, is that per charger or total?
This is the maximum for each charger.
Each charger? Okay.
Not each cable, each charger. In total, yeah.
So it's shared between...
So this is what's been installed, but there's only, so this is what you see at most sites. It's a maximum 75, but it does have dual charging. So it will share 50 to the CCS and 25 to the Leaf, but it's a maximum of 75. All right, this one can accept more modules. So if it has 4 modules, which will make it 100 in capacity, it will give 50 each side. Okay, and...
What would be the charging capacity if you actually do the load balancing based on the inputs and based on the vehicle capacity, if that's correct?
I don't think it matters what speed your car's charging at. Okay. Nothing to do with the car. I think it's to do with how many modules are inside and the...
5 kilowatt module.
Yeah, so, yeah, because it's blocks of 25, essentially. So that's what I'm saying. If there's 4 25 block modules and you've got 2 cars charging, one will get 2 modules, one will get 2 modules. In this scenario where they've only put 3 modules inside, one's getting 1 and one's getting 2. But the bias is to the Chartamo, no matter what. So it's not like the Leaf will stick to the 50 kilowatt and the Model Y will only get 25. It will never happen. The Leaf will always get the 25 because that's how they've biased it in the inside of the charger.
Pretty much, Chartamo is kind of like end of the line in 10 years.
You said that, not me. Yes, go for it.
The problem I had, this was down the Gold Coast at Vaulta.
Yep.
And they've just put in a new one of
Yep.
these. And I went and there was a Tesla charging on the right side.
Yes.
And it wouldn't charge while another one, it would only do one at a time.
On this one here,
I'm not sure which one.
that's the City of Gold Coast one.
one was for Tesla and one was for...
Yeah.
And
How many times did you try?
Oh, then I rang them.
I think sometimes you have to try
Yes, but no.
a couple of times.
Said, and then it had fully charged, but was still plugged in, and I still couldn't charge.
Look, this is not a tritium only thing as well, because we noticed there was some strange behaviour between the Chartermo and the CCS when we used the ABB charger at Ampol at Castledine. If the Chartermo was started and the CCS plug started getting used, there wasn't any problem, but the Chartermo couldn't start once the CCS plug was already in use. So I'm not sure what's going there.
They said it was an old model, and I said it had just been put in.
It might have been this earlier one.
No, it didn't look like that.
It didn't look like that? Okay. Well, that one? Well, that's pretty newish, really.
Yeah,
So.
and while it was plugged in and couldn't put it out.
It might just need a software upgrade. That might be all.
Well, that's a question. Do you have the right to remove the
Yes.
charge?
Well, I did make it. You can't for a Tesla because it's already locked up and then...
Next one, mate. I just wanted to, just moving onward, I just wanted to correct, somewhere along the line I got told that these Birkdale chargers were 75 kilowatt. I think that might have been off the plug share, but they're actually only 50. So just a correction on that one. And just a little reminder, because some people don't seem to know they're there, even though... Birkdale Fair. Birkdale Fair, yeah. Well, yeah, it's in the car park of Birkdale Fair. New charger been installed here at the Brickworks, Ferry Road. Just been turned on very recently. Once again, EV Networks, another 2. It will be interesting, seeing as the whole Gold Coast are pretty much 75 kilowatt chargers at 30 cents, to see how this goes with 50 kilowatt limitation and 40 cents. So sometimes, I think the Currell one's completely offline. So I think sometimes there's issues with some of the chargers being online. So perhaps, and with those ones, who do you call? So you're calling ChargeFox because they're handling, yeah, it's not the Gold Coast City Council. But yeah, we'll see. I'll keep an eye out and get back to you on that one. But essentially all the chargers are 30 cents except for the supercharger and the 350, but we'll see how that one goes. There's a couple of new sites also getting installed at Australia Fair. We're getting in Alanga. That's at the top there. And looks like EV Networks are putting a charger in at Pacific Fair where the supercharger is as well. So bloody Gold Coast are going to start taking over Brisbane for the most amount of chargers soon.
Is this another app?
This is PlugShare.
Yeah. Oh, then, how do you start doing it? Is that another app?
Yeah.
PlugShare is like the app, mate.
Oh, no, for Alanga.
Oh, for Alanga.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't charged on an Alanga, so I couldn't tell you. There's none near me, and Les says it sucks. So.
Yeah, you got to add credit.
What if it's your local, mate? Like, yeah, look, the idea's been floated that we have an AEVA card, an RFID card that's compatible to all chargers, and we just yeah. It's better because then you don't have Wi-Fi or signal problems as well. But yes.
Local villages, for some reason, PlugShare, ChargeFox app won't work. So I want it. But the RFID card, and I've added the RFID card in my app, and I've just tried the NFC on the back of the phone.
Top tip, use your RFID card. You can just go on I'm pretty sure you can get RFID cards through the apps themselves, generally speaking. But if I speak with the, well, I've got a director now. So director, can you please raise that with the national body? We want AEVA cards for 2023.
EV
That'd be great.
join.
Oh, we weren't going to ask permission. We were just going to just.
Chargefox probably would, but EV were not. They weren't receptive when I was speaking.
Okay.
Maybe they are now.
Okay. We'll see. All right. Each month I give the phase 3 rollout a bit of a hit, and this is the what it was like last month. That's what it's going to end up looking like, but this is last month. And if you just go to the next slide, there we go. We've had Charters Towers, Hughenden, Cloncurry and Winton online, and we already had Longreach, and I think Blackall is near the middle of Ethel. That is getting a charger too. So what are we down to? 18 sites still to go. So is anyone, one of these sites are all rolled out, is anyone going to do a trip west?
I've probably gone to Costco, and Costco doesn't have it. Right opposite the Puma has 2 charger stations.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's the 150 EV ones.
Where's that at?
Right opposite to the Costco in Bandamba.
Oh yes, yes. West. Not West Brisbane, mate. Not West Brisbane. West. Yeah, not here. No. All right, let's go. Next one. Okay, I've shown this slide a few times before. I thought I'd just tally up how many of the sites have come online. I think it's not many. There's one at Noosa for the Sunshine Coast. I think that's the EV Networks one just put in. And I think there's another one just there at Southport. I could be getting that wrong, but there's 2 on that one and the 6 so far. 6 of 58, so lots to go still. And just the roundup of pricing, I have gone through this the last few months, so I won't bore you too much, but the BP Pulse has been added there for 55 cents. Petrol did finally go up, so as per my calculation thing here, unleaded's $1 per kilowatt hour at the moment, and diesel's $1.16 per kilowatt hour. Gives you half the price and you get the kilowatt hourage. Okay, EV events, we've done a couple of bits and pieces, and we've got a few events coming up. So just after the last meeting, I organised a car park meetup at Indooroopilly, and boy, that car park is interesting. But we had more than 18 EVs there, so it was pretty fun. There's a couple of slides for this, Les. Yeah, there's a few. There's a few. So, I mean, you've seen EVs in a car park before, but essentially, there is some weird entry here that goes kind of in and immediately one way, like right, and then you can come out somewhere here like that. But this is the main entry, and the EV Networks charger is right there as you come in, but you kind of have to go past and then back around. And that's generally the direction you have to travel to the supercharger for those that have a Tesla. It wasn't too bad of a site really, but very, very congested. Now this wasn't an AEVA event, and it couldn't be because I didn't want too many people to participate in this, because it would have meant hours and hours and hours of charging to get the numbers. But I organised, Francisco has got the BYD and he had the MG already and he's selling the MG, so we wanted to whip around and do a circuit and test the efficiency, and I've got a few other guys to come along. Graham came along in his IMEV 30 kilowatt hour. Now, for this test, we wanted to measure the efficiency, so do exactly the same route, come back and charge to the same point that we started at and see how much went in for that trip. And it didn't really matter necessarily so when I got there I was on like 89%, so I just charged until it ticked over to 90%, and then after I did the trip I started on 61% and then charged until the second it hit 90 and it hit stop, and then I get whatever it was, 20 kilowatt hours, yeah, this amount here, 21 kilowatt hours went in, and then we worked out, you know, what car was the most efficient, and unsurprisingly the original Ionic with the 38 kilowatt hour battery was very good. Next time I do plan to do this again with some different models, maybe a different route, but I think next time I will have cars start a bit slower because then they don't have to end up in the slow end of the charging curve. But yeah, that was a fun day. So essentially we went from Coochin Creek out to Kenilworth and then back around. And yeah, it was a good fun experience.
How many Ks is it?
So it was 71 from Coochin Creek to Kenilworth, and then it was 85 back around, so it was like 156 I think it was, or something in that vicinity. Yeah, so whatever you want. Depends if you want to win the efficiency or not. So to be honest, I don't always have my aircon on. It depends on the temperature. So in this example, I did have it. Look, basically I've got this rule of thumb, and if I'm feeling hot and it's above, say, 24 degrees, then I'll have the aircon on. But generally, like today and like this week, there's just no way you can have it off, right? So you just have it on. I guess I suffer through the cooler months to the point where I'm just getting too hot and then I have it on. So I won't deny that I'm seeking efficiency. But yeah, the Atto 3 quite thirsty. We'll see. But that's good because like you get the numbers from car websites and stuff like that compare these cars, and this was almost an exact car for car. Like I was out the front, I'm not going to make excuses, I was out the front, you know, taking all the wind, and everyone was drafting behind me. No, they weren't. No, we said beforehand, don't draft if you can, you know, but yeah, no, it was a fun day. You just want me to send them to you in an email?
Oh,
or?
okay. Oh, I can just take a photo. No.
That's all right.
Oh, it's not coming. I'm surprised the iron is so thirsty.
What was the order? First, second, third?
That's it, mate. That's top. Yeah, that was the order there, top to bottom. Ionic first, Model 3 second, Kona, IMEV, ZS, and Atto 3. So.
Interesting if you did that by mass.
Yeah, Gavin suggested that.
Good suggestion.
But look, I've already put this out. It's too late to give me that stuff afterwards.
I'll quickly give another thought.
Yeah.
I'll roll through this.
I don't want to linger on this too much, but I'm starting to question the capacity of my battery because I've just had it replaced under the brand. It's pretty much brand new, and there's a question mark over my 64 usable because that's either got a humongous amount of loss in there or the capacity is a little higher than after 3 years. There's maybe a theory that normally they're 60 amp hour cells and maybe after 3 years they've got the same pouches and they're maybe 65 amp hour cells or something like that. Who knows? But it's a difficult thing to test because you have to charge to 100, then discharge at a constant speed for, do you know how long it takes to discharge the Kona's battery? You know, like, yeah, like days and days, so I'm not doing it. So, all right, let's move on.
Quick question.
Yeah, go for it.
With the AEVA, I took it up to 100% again just this week, and it actually showed me less kilometres when it had reset. In the range, it said 340 remaining again. When I was at 90% the day before, it said 390.
Yeah, I've said this a few times to people. You do need to charge to 100% every so often because it resets. That's how the BMS knows that's the top. So you do have to do that. You don't have to do it all that often, but if you want an accurate GOM number or a slightly more accurate GOM number, then that's when it knows it's at 100%. So that's you charge up to 100 every now and again.
Could that be affecting your figures there if you haven't done the 100% reset and temperatures go up?
It won't affect it. It won't affect it.
No?
Because essentially I've picked a point somewhere on the battery, I've driven, and then I've charged back to that exact point. And
that exact point after you've driven won't be that exact point. It's still guessing. Is the voltage and everything else will be dependent on
it's...
Don't use the plug-in, so it's really quite
No, the figures look fine. Just think
I don't know if it varies within a 3-hour window.
it'd be more the temperature and what you've done with the batteries.
Yeah.
If you let it go.
But by the same token, all cars are under those conditions, so I don't think there's any bias there. But I look at the other numbers, and they're pretty close to what their capacities are, and mine. I'm more acutely aware of what's happening with the Kona because I'm more familiar with it. But for example, the 38 kilowatt hour Ioniq should have pretty much the same cells, and it's only showing maybe 5% bigger battery than with the losses and stuff like that. Anyway, just rambling now. So, Francisco's here. Okay. EV events. These are future EV events. If you haven't already read them, so Solar Citizens. Who's going to Solar Citizens? A few hands. Okay. Oh, thanks for joining, mate. Better late than never. All right. Yeah. So if you don't know about it or you're thinking about going, there is I have sent out an email. I'm going to send out another one. They do want a few more cars in attendance if they can get them. Yeah.
And not getting as many people as they thought they would.
Yeah.
My car's going to be there as a drive around.
Yeah. You might be the only one doing drive tests. No, I'm just joking. No, I'm sure you won't be. But look, I think perhaps it's a result of the successful stuff we've done in the past. You know, we do some pretty big shows. We get a lot of EVs. But perhaps there wasn't a huge amount of notice for me on this one, and I did promote it to a lot of people. And you know, it's also the time of the year and things like that. So. You know, Sanford isn't maybe as accessible for everyone that, you know, lives on the south side and that type of stuff. So, but yeah, if you're interested in going, like by all means, we're going to.
The point of the exercise is to demonstrate to people that the constituents are interested in electric vehicles. Yeah. So that if you have no other reason to go,
Stick it up, spot.
Ask him if he's eaten a hot dog lately. No, what was it? A Dagwood dog. All right, our friends at Toka are doing a drive to Mullaney. I will send out a thing for that, and I'll probably send out a few bits and pieces about the Breakfast Creek Hotel. 16th of December, we're just going to have casual beers if anyone wants to come along. We don't have a December meeting, so that's the substitute, is having a social catch-up.
Are we staying for dinner?
No, just 3 p.m. No, I don't think so. No, there's no booking. We're just going to turn up. I mean, it's not far away for those that have to come up, but no. it can be a bit tricky that time of year because people have already got so many Christmas functions on and stuff like that. So I'd much prefer to organise something where it's come if you want to come and don't if you can't, you know. That's I find it's much easier to organise events that way. On the 8th of January, Aaron from Toka, who's now the chair over there, and we're having a chat about doing a barbecue in the park. So that's the day. I did suggest the Victoria Park because that was quite a nice venue and central. So we'll think about that one and I'll get some more information out to you. The next hall meeting will be 18th of January here. And just a couple of things that are happening. Oh, is I write the wrong month, did I? Okay. All right. I copied it straight off the website, but okay, let's go with... Now, there was some other thing on there that actually said fully charged, but it was like, it had a petrol motor on there or something. And then there was a second one that was fully charged April in Sydney. So I'm happy to be wrong, but I looked at the one that did have the fully charged emblem. Perfect. You forward that to me and I'll...
It definitely says 10th and 11th of March.
Okay, perfect, good. All right, consider that my mistake. And the Solar Challenge is on in October. So we'll look out for more info on that. Anyone going to travel to Adelaide to see that? I know it seems pretty interesting. They haven't done it for a few years. So just general news. Don't double click, mate. Do you have to close and? General news. What did I write? The BYD sales aren't doing too bad. I think they came out at the very end of August, and so there was only 4 sales for that month, and then there was around 70 for September and about 150 for October. So they've sold about 230 BYDs so far. So not...
Wait, is that just Brisbane?
Yeah, national. Yeah, there we go. 234, my apologies. But yeah, we've got a few around, so Francisco's got one. The Tesla opened the service centre.
Is that delivered or purchased?
I don't know, mate. I don't know. You've got yours, so that's all that matters.
I'm lucky.
You're lucky.
Apparently they stopped a few hours after I picked mine up.
Oh, okay. Tesla opened its service centre at Mount Gravatt, and it's got 11 hoists, so there's always been a bit of a thing about where do you get cars serviced for Teslas, because they don't have that many showrooms and that type of thing, and now they've got a massive facility. Apparently the downstairs beneath where their, all their hoists are, there's some incredible amount of level 2 charges, like 100 or something like that. So if you do take your car there, it's going to come back probably with more juice than what you take it there. And finally from me, just one little other bit, and that's the New South Wales government giving the best part of 40 million for fast charging grants. Now, the interesting part for me, because I can only ever think about charging, is that they're going to do 86 new fast, and fast is really like 50 kilowatt, and ultra fast is, I believe, over 100 or over 150. Each with 4 to 15 bays. Each of these stations will contain a minimum of 2 ultra-fast EV charging bays of 350 and 2 fast charging bays of 175, sorry, with some stations containing up to 15 bays. Ampol, EV, BP, Tesla, and NRMA and Zeus Renewables are the ones involved, and this will happen over the next 2 years. So, yeah, very interesting to see what's happening elsewhere. So, All right, that's very much enough from me. Dominic's.
On those ones, I've heard through the Tesla people that the Tesla ones will be
The Tesla will be open for the what?
Tesla superchargers will be open to the public and the ones that are funded by this project.
Oh, okay, interesting. Okay. I mean, they have Tesla charging available in Europe already, I think, don't they? And yeah. Look, as we saw the pricing model, it'll be interesting to see how that happens. Like, if you're desperate or you don't care, then you just charge anywhere. Then, whoa. Okay. Yes, Dominic. Save me here, mate. Okay, you're up. All working?
I think so.
Okay. Speaking to the top
sure.
of that.
All right. Thanks everyone for having me. It's my first time at one of these sorts of events, so bear with me. But I've worked in batteries for around maybe 7 years. My background goes back to I was working for a company called Albion Power Systems here in Australia. They were owned by a Chinese company called AEVA. So at that stage in 2015, there wasn't a hell of a lot of EVs going around, and I had moved across from designing a lot of consumer products and was basically thrust into the whole world of designing EV batteries pretty much from scratch. So that was both a curse and an opportunity, because I went into it with fairly clear eyes, and what came out of that was what I believe was some change was required to how we were designing batteries. We were designing batteries basically that had a lot of parts, had a lot of things that could go wrong, and very little verification, particularly in the production process if there was a problem that had occurred through the manufacturing. So yeah, that goes back about 7 years now. So founded Vaulta in 2019, basically designing battery casing technology. There's two streams to what we do, mostly around mechanical design, but also materials composition. So you can see here a bit of a snapshot of who we are as a team at the moment. We're actually just based in Windsor, just a few blocks up from here really. So pretty easy commute for me tonight. But yeah, so snapshot of the team. We've got some great advisors. We're about to bring on a new technical advisor who was the ex-CTO of CATL. So for the people that follow batteries in the room, which is everyone, they're the biggest battery company on the planet. So Bob's probably overseen more batteries going into the world than Elon. So bringing him on as a technical advisor is a really big coup for us. Jerome is probably the brains of it these days. I've sort of passed on a lot of the design work and research and development to Jerome. So he is only about 26 years old, but he'd love an event like this, I would have thought. He, instead of going home and watching Netflix, and my wife's told me to be home so we can watch Yellowstone, but he basically just goes home and does battery research. So, and Alan's actually ex-Tesla. We are hiring. We are looking for technicians. If anyone in the room knows any sort of battery tinkerers and assembly engineers and designers, so if you know of anyone working in that space, please do let me know. Let me know offline. We've won a couple of awards recently, so most of what we do is centred around circular economy and circularity, bringing circularity to batteries specifically. So we just won the National Good Design Award in that space, and also the Australian Technology Competition in circular economy as well. So some of the companies that we beat out in that space, I actually sat next to one of the guys from Hyundai at the Good Design Awards, so it was a nice little coup to take out a win over some of the big dogs, but he actually was pretty gracious about it and let me borrow an Ioniq 5 for about a week, which...
Is that Scott Nagar?
Sorry?
Scott Nagar?
No, Bill someone or other, I forget his name. Mr. Hyundai. Anyway, I certainly figured out some of the top speeds of that car, but that's okay. I guess the reason why we exist and what makes us a little bit different is the issue that I discovered working in the field was centred around battery waste. And one thing I'd say as a caveat is I'm not here to bash any EV makers, or I think it's better to have an EV than the alternative. But there is some chinks in the armour of EVs and battery systems worldwide at the moment, and it's centred around how we get rid of them. How do we repair them? How do we assess them for second life applications? And currently there's widespread, not really a lot of options. So I guess the big takeaway is, as we scale batteries, we're actually scaling battery waste as well at the moment. So we think this has a lot to do with it. So how batteries go together, I don't know a lot about battery chemistry, but I do know a fair bit about how we put them together into packages. There's welding, screwing, gluing. They're not meant to come out of there. So is there anyone in the room that follows Sandy Munro's? Everybody? Yep. So everyone's watched the Model Y tear down, and you've seen how... Good luck. That's right. That's right. It's good. I usually have to explain who that is as well. So let me just give you a quick video.
Bringing our stuff to life, and the key to our renewable energy future. Our houses, our cars, our gadgets, our planes, all of them are going renewable, and that energy needs a place to be stored. And look, we're pretty good at making batteries, but boy, we're terrible at recycling. We weld them, glue them into cases, screw them and suck the life out of them. And because it's just too complicated and bloody expensive for businesses to recycle, pretty much all of them go into the bin. Trouble is, we're about to need a much bigger bin. You know, about 300,000 electric cars are sold every month these days. The world is hooked, and we're about to buy a...
That's probably jumped up a little bit, more than 300,000.
And each and every battery they use will need to be replaced. When we do, we're going to send 25,000 tonnes of batteries a week into landfill. That's like chucking South Australia's mega battery into the bin every 7 days. And it's costing car makers, battery companies and any businesses that rely on batteries an obscene amount of money. It's an unconscionable burden for the environment, for the planet, for our future.
I'll stop it there because it gets a little markety towards the end. So our solution, or how we operate, is centred around design for disassembly. So my background is in industrial design. So Dieter Rams is kind of he's the sort of icon for all industrial designers, and he developed this this principles of good design, what makes good design, basically 10 simple rules, and they're very, very basic, but he was talking about sustainability and can it be reused and recycled back in the 60s and 70s, and we haven't seen that adopted largely by most battery companies at the moment. It's a race towards $1 per kilowatt hour and range, and that's driven largely by the consumer, and we believe that from a manufacturing standpoint we should be looking more not just at $1 per kilowatt hour at the point of purchase, but the $1 per kilometre throughout the lifetime of the battery. So how much does the battery cost throughout its lifetime? There's companies like Everledger that are basically using the blockchain to decipher where battery materials are coming from and where they're going, where they finish, where they can be reused and used in recycled applications. We believe that new batteries will contain recycled content within 5 years. So brand new batteries will contain recycled content. So doing something about how we disassemble and repair batteries is a critical fact that we need to deal with right now. So it's pretty simple, to be honest. I've brought one of our oldest and boldest prototypes here. So, you know, you're welcome to come up and have a look. But basically what we've done is we've eliminated cell tab welding and developed mechanical design that allows us to use compression as the actual current collection system. We've basically simulated that cell tab welding through specific mechanical designs, minimising contact resistance. So if you're not welding a battery, contact resistance is the enemy. So and the result of contact resistance is heat, which is degradation. So it's not a trivial process. So we've spent probably 2 years in research and development doing that. And we've now sort of got to the end of that stage and also started working on some thermally conductive materials. So you can get a bit of an idea of how the product works. This is basically what I'd call a nail board. Current collectors lie into that nail board, then the cells sit on that. and so on and so forth. This comes down over this pegboard or nail board here, and then you've got this slide and lock system. And obviously you're welcome to come up and have a look. What that allows us to do is assemble batteries very quickly, but also disassemble. And for the recyclers that want to use this, and they do, it means that you can actually get down to the cell level for recycling, which is a really important way to cheapen the recycling process. If you can recycle at the cell level, you can make recycling facilities shipping container sized rather than, square kilometre large facilities, which means people that, when the battery finishes its life, you pay dangerous goods freight from every point until it finishes its life. So if you can shred it closer to where it finishes its life, you can send it by Australia Post. So I'll just give you a quick, I'll pause this one throughout as well, but this gives you a bit of a snapshot of how we work with cylindrical cells. That goes on for a while. So that goes on for a little while. So the aim of that test is to basically test manual assembly versus manual assembly. So spot welding machines typically do what Jerome on the left-hand side of the screen was doing, but it gives you a bit of an idea that there's potentially a better way that we can do this, and we believe we're onto something with this, but also how do we get the heat out of the cells? So we've developed some plastics that are thermally conductive but electrically insular. So the test jig here was 120 degrees constant temperature, test sample, basically heat through here and measure the temperature on the other side. So this is copper, just here. Really good thermally conductor. Excellent at electrical conductivity as well, which makes it, but it's also very heavy, very expensive, and not suitable for casing for batteries. This is standard ABS plastic, terrible at conducting heat, but is quite excellent and low cost. So what we've done is put various fillers inside ABS plastic and polycarbonate it only comes at a weight penalty of around 10%, and you can see that it's coming pretty close to mimicking thermal conductivity of copper, and it's still around 6 or 7 times lighter than copper. So this is quite a big breakthrough that we're trying to look at other avenues, not just in batteries, but it allows us to make the casing very simple and effective, but also use the casing itself to draw some of the heat away. So it's a work in progress. The applications at the moment that we're working on, our focus, to be fair, is in these areas here. So static storage, we're going through all of the safety certifications for these 2 products at the moment. Those are for commercial energy storage, somewhat residential as well. This one here, which I've brought along, happy to come and have a bit of a play with that one as well. So that's a 12 volt. Anyone who goes camping probably knows those metrics, 100 amp hour battery, 12 volt. If you're using a lead acid battery, that's probably about 32 kilos. That one there's 10 kilograms. So, and not being lead acid allows full depth of discharge as well. So I've taken it camping. It's basically, taking the coffee machine is basically the only way that I can get my wife to go camping. So that's why it's a game changer. The other areas we're looking at, so we've got a couple of customers in vacuum cleaners, so stick vacuums. I think at any given time, if you were to go to a battery recycling centre, and there's not many around, most of what you'd see would be Dyson batteries going into that recycling. I think at any given time there might be 4% of the batteries that need to be recycled on the planet might be Dyson stick batteries. So we're working in that space. We've just taken on a development contract with LG. So that's a big sort of get for a smallish company like ours. So working with a tier 1 company on that is a big deal. But obviously, and for those in the room, EVs is where we're working. So it is a work in progress for EVs. We are working with a defence company on some quad bikes at the moment. So that's a bit of a trial project. And we may look at a leaf conversion or a leaf retrofit through the Good Car Company. Are you guys aware of those guys? Yeah. So Anthony's come up to the office a couple of times, and Anthony's just accepted a fairly large sum of money from Mike Cannon-Brooks. So I think it's time for him to get out his checkbook. He was looking forward to doing a lot of that at not low cost, but...
Would that be like the same capacity for a 24 kilowatt hour or a bigger capacity in the same cells?
We've done the test. We think we could fit LFP batteries, prismatic LFP batteries, up to about 30 kilowatt hours. And then there would be an NMC equivalent in the same cell, which would get up to about 55 kilowatt hours. So you can really ramp up, the capacity that's inside those, and it gives you a bit of an idea about how sort of early the Leafs were in terms of energy density. And they certainly had some thermal issues. So, the big difference is, and like I said, I'm not here to bash any of these companies, but how do we compete? Like, why would a company like mine try to come up against some of the biggest companies on the planet? The answer is we're not, but these are the key areas that we still have a breakthrough over these companies. And every week I can look at these companies looking at my website and figuring out that they need to start doing something about this. And if we fail in the process of them making the same sorts of changes that we propose, well, then I can live with that, because we just don't want to see the battery waste become an overbearing issue. So, for anyone that's sort of thinking about starting a company, this will give you a bit of an idea of what you might want to expect in terms of, raising money, particularly through a pandemic. Just a little bit of a added bit of fun just for that. But yeah, I basically came up with the idea in 2019. I wasn't a budding serial entrepreneur. It was more just the battery company that I work for basically just folded in Australia. So kind of gave me basically no choice at that point, that I had to essentially start it myself or continue the game, because it was a field that I kind of felt myself pretty at home in. I'd been doing a lot of things like defence. I did satellites for about 10 years, consumer products, all sorts of stuff. So I felt batteries was kind of where I was at home. So we went through some angel funding, a couple of research MOUs, they call them. So you basically sign on with some big companies and talk about, some research ideas, and we had some good gains out of that. Went through some grant funding last year. Started getting some paying customers towards the back end of last year. I'd held off for long enough because we just wanted to stick to R&D, and obviously through a lot of those lockdowns, it was a really sort of good way to just sort of knuckle down and do that. We actually ended up renting a house to use as an office, and the garage was the workshop, and that was really good because we felt we were fairly sort of lockdown proof, that we didn't have to, sort of be at home all the time. We were kind of at home anyway, but probably come November last year, it just became just unbearingly hot in the garage, so it was time to move. So we've moved across to the facility. We've got about 200 square metres in Windsor. Interestingly enough, we're just below a gym, and the gym, I always thought to myself, the worst name you could ever come up with for a battery company would be Phoenix, just because of the... And it turns out that the gym above us is called Phoenix, and right above our building, right above our floor, there's just this big sign that just says Phoenix, so a little bit of irony in that. So we do plan to sort of do a lot more EV work during 2023, but it's certainly dependent on some of that quad bike trial work that we're doing at the moment, because the key things that we need to address that we're not necessarily having to deal with in stationary storage is vibration, shock, all of those things. So, they're challenges. We have done, internal projects, skateboards, scooters, things like that. So we are optimistic about the potential outcomes, but at the moment we're just, we're a small company, so we're focusing on stationary storage. I don't think I've got anything more.
Well, I'm sure there's going to be questions.
Yeah, I'll open up to the room. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, shoot. With the non-solar, non-welding, how do you get your BMS sort of in?
Yeah, so you can see on this particular one here, we've got a spade connector. You can connect on a spade connector for those ones and basically have the BMS just separate to that. In this one, there's a BMS already in there, but we actually just went through a fairly extensive process of developing our own BMS for stationary storage applications. So we used a spin-out company who came out of Tritium, and they're actually heavily involved in the solar race car industry as well. That's actually, I think that's where Tritium was actually sort of founded, was in that solar race car industry. So everyone that works in the field kind of calls Tritium kind of Kevin Bacon, because you don't have to sort of go too far to find someone who worked in Tritium. Everyone sort of hires ex-Tritium people. EVOS is ex-Tritium. So it's, they're kind of 6 degrees of separation. Or do you still work there? You work there? Sometimes?
He's not admitting.
Do you have like a cost per kilowatt hour for your stationary
Number one.
To you or to me?
Well, you know, when you're looking out to sort of sell.
Yeah, I think when we're out there selling wholesale type prices, we can sell static storage at around somewhere between $350 and $550 per kilowatt hour. So, for instance, that 14 kilowatt hour system we've developed, I think Tesla Power was about 13K to install, and that's 13 kilowatt hours and 7 kilowatts usable, or 5 kilowatt usable. Ours is 14.3, sorry, and 7.5 kilowatt usable. So we're not necessarily in the residential game. I'm not sure if anyone went to that All Energy down in Melbourne recently. I think there was about 600,000 residential batteries that you could pick from. So it's not necessarily a field we're mostly interested in, but for commercial energy storage, there's a big opportunity.
Yeah, I'm just thinking more about, you know, converting plastics and stuff.
Yeah, it's a real horses for courses sort of application, because a lot of it comes down to the cell, and we're fairly well cell agnostic. And these are a Chinese company called Powerlong, and you can really beat the hell out of these batteries. They can take a really high discharge rate. We did some work with a drag racing battery company in Canada, and you can push these to sort of 10C, and they're pretty comfortable. They're in short bursts and sort of 3C constant. So yeah, fairly high drain. But it's horses for courses for conversions, because obviously there's non-recurring engineering costs that go into that, rather than just saying, here's, you know, $1 per kilowatt hour.
Yeah. So, double barrel question. First of all, do you sell to the public?
We're thinking about it.
Do you sell to AEVA members?
Yeah. Specific ones.
What we're thinking of doing, and like I said, residential is not necessarily our sort of picked market, but it's come up a few times, and I'll tell a closed room, and how many people on Zoom? A million people, of course. Yeah, we're thinking of running a pilot program probably in the first quarter or maybe second quarter of next year. I'll talk to you, John, about that offline, about getting some...
The second part of the question is, roughly what are you looking at for, I said, a camping battery kind of?
Yeah, again, mostly what we're planning to do is white label it through other companies. So I think by the time it hits a shelf, it'll probably be about maybe $900,000. Yeah. Again, if there's, you know, enough interest, we'll run a small batch for people. The main thing is that we're very much focused on that static storage. So when it comes to things like, you know, after sales and things like that, we're still working on that. So that's what we're, I guess, testing in that pilot program. We've been doing a lot of demos on the residential battery and its battery management system. It has... Every single cell is managed and monitored voltage-wise, and every second cell is monitored for temperature. So really comprehensive, has temperature cut-offs, has a fuse break. I think it has about 4 lines of defence before it actually does anything catastrophic.
We might save any further questions for after, when we just have a social chat, just so we can get through the other speakers. Everyone, thank you to Dominic. Thanks, mate. You up, Dave?
All right. All right, my name is David Nyambuya. I'm the director and founder of EV Charging Australia. So, the next slide, please, good sir.
I'm just sharing this screen.
Okay. Okay, so we were founded in 2020, originally born of the idea that, well, there was no solution if you broke down with your EV somewhere besides getting towed and waiting 2 hours. And that's a personal experience that I had coming back from Sydney with my family. Where were we? Stuck just before Byron Bay. It was raining, and if you know, EVs and rain don't mix. It was really bad weather, and we got down to about 2%, and the closest charger at Macadamia Castle was probably another 80 kilometers to go. So that was fun with a toddler at the back. We made it, just barely. I had to push it actually. And so went back to the drawing board, and I thought to myself, hey, you know what? I love my EV. I've always been I love technology. Been in Australia for 15 years and was lucky to work with some big organizations like Apple, stripping apart, Macs and all that. And I thought to myself, why isn't there something that would suit the EV realm of Australia? What would happen if we broke down and you didn't have anyone to rescue you? Or better yet, why not create a solution that would top you up while you have lunch or dinner, instead of having to cut that short to rush to actually, charge your EV. And so EV charging, Australia was born from that. We, back and forth, similar to Dom, was in a garage, got a van, started stripping apart a couple of things. The best solution I could come up with at that time was a biodiesel solution, and to which that would service both metro and regional, and allow us to get back and forth between that, right? Which was great. So I thought, you know what, let's launch this thing. Let's forget buying the family land and building the home and put everything into this baby of ours. Fast forward 1 year from that, I created a subscription model, which was really awesome in my head, and I got 0 subscribers for a good 6 months. That was pretty hard, but what I learned from that is I needed to adapt to the market, right? As much as I thought it was a great solution to provide to customers, create a subscription model where someone would pay $80 a month and people would rock up and charge your vehicle, maybe Australia wasn't ready for that. And so I thought, let me pivot. So the market told me that commercially, businesses wanted to try get into EVs, but they were scared to invest 80 grand into, at that point, Tesla, and completely overhaul their whole fleet, because range anxiety was always going to be something, and convincing their staff was always going to be something as well. So we started doing a couple of things, started doing consulting. We put more money into software. We really focused on trialing a couple charges as well. So we went into infrastructure, and we still do that as well. And also just managing electric vehicle infrastructure as well. You can go to the next slide, please, good sir. And that's me with our unicorn van. And she's the one that pretty much treks around Australia. We actually used that van when, can't mention the name, when an EV truck company was touring from Victoria all the way up to Queensland, and she sort of just followed behind there as a support mechanism. So we've used that van for a lot of consulting work with a lot of large organizations, just helping them with that big thing, which is range anxiety. Next slide, please, good sir. So our core competences now, actually, we've expanded. We focus heavily on EV charger installation. We've actually created our own EVCA fund, and we installed our first commercial charger in Willawong. There was nothing in the area, nothing in Pollara. A couple of times I was south side and almost got stuck because there was no chargers. So what we've done is we've dipped into our own pockets and are actually creating our own network. We've partnered up with a couple of organizations that have given us some of their land, and we'll actually be installing EV charging stations and creating a private network that would help incentivize more people to feel comfortable about electric vehicles. We still do mobile charging, which is still part of the core of the business. We actually had a pilot with a real estate business, and what we would do is the agents, when they would go from house to house, we would pop in on their 4th house, and top them up for 100 Ks, and that allowed the agent to keep working. And that's because whenever they would rock up to Tesla, there weren't any charging bays available to charge, so they were losing productivity from that. Roadside assistance and operations has been a big thing for us as well. We've launched a bit of tire service and rescue. Actually went to BYD 2 months ago to sit down with them. We're actually working with a company called AEVA, and you probably know that electric vehicle tires are hard to find and then hard again to replace. So we've started doing that, and that's been really awesome. That's been a really good tick box for us operationally. We've actually gained quite a few good clients from that, but more importantly, a lot of Uber drivers that use electric vehicles now feel, they can get back on the road a lot quicker without having to, wait until Tesla opens or Hyundai opens or whomever opens on Monday. A couple of things we're working on as well with the EV chargers. We're actually trying to create our own vehicle-to-grid and grid-to-vehicle chargers, which is a work in progress. I think that's something we feel would help to, deal with the grid situation that Australia's eventually going to face when more electric vehicles are out and about. And as well, on top of that, we've got our own software that we are 90% close to launching in Australia, which is going to be an awesome little tick box there, because it will be open API and can work with really any charger that's got the smarts behind it as well. Next one, please. Good, sir. So a couple of snippets of what we've done. So we actually had one of the BYD vans for a little bit after our little meet and greets there, which was awesome. So we've got a mandate to convert our whole fleet to electric by 2028. Currently, we're sitting at about 60% being fully electric. And the goal is, we know we're always going to need, unfortunately, for now, we're going to need a diesel unit, to get out to remote areas for some of our clients. But while we're in metro areas, we lean on a couple of BYDs and Teslas to kind of do the job for us. Tire service as well there. That's in Helensvale, actually, just by the charger at the back there by the train station. That's one of our first ones that we did. And a couple of our solutions as well with our infrastructure. So really want to start to see more adoption, people get more comfortable with electric vehicles. I know the journey from that is going to be a slow one. We've had discussions with government and a couple of organizations where, we've kind of said, hey, look, we're here, we're trying to create a solution that can help assist and clear off that range anxiety. And we've kind of come to the conclusion that if we don't do it, no one else will. So hence why this is what we are doing. Next slide, please. So we've worked with a couple of organizations. Kokoda Property has been awesome. So we will be installing, part of our EVCA fund, we'll be installing chargers at each and every one of their buildings. The Community Co have also given us license to a lot of their buildings as well. So once again, we want to increase more EV infrastructure, and not just when you're taking a long trip up north. It's in the metro areas, If you've got an electric vehicle now, there's certain times during the week where it's just terrible to try and get a charge because you rock up and someone's blocked it out. And that's that sort of takes away from why we are getting into electric vehicles. So we're hoping, the more and more we can get into it, the better. National Transport Insurance has also come on board, and they're one of the biggest insurers for electric vehicles, mainly in the trucking industry, which is really awesome. So we're partnering up with a couple of trucking organizations, helping them trial their trucks, which we hope, if you start to see a couple more of that, people once again will feel more comfortable with that as well. CCST has been great. So what we're doing as well is, a big thing is an education piece. So CCST actually help us with custom compliance videos that we actually then complimentary provide to our customers. And that's kind of putting more onus on commercial businesses to go, you know what, we've ticked the box for range anxiety for your staff because we've got a mobile solution. We've got roadside assistance if a tire happens to pop. And you know what? We're going to create free compliance videos for your staff to go through as well. And so therefore, there shouldn't be an excuse for businesses to not start to actually convert their fleet to electric vehicles as well. And the next slide as well. And that's it for me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions for David? Go for it, Jen.
Yeah, my question, David, is what sort of relationship do you have with EV owners who have the misfortune to live in blocks of flats, multiple occupancies where there are no charging facilities on site and they've got to go to a fast charger somewhere or some other fairly unsatisfactory arrangement?
Yep, good question. So with Community Co, for example, they've got about 70 buildings, stratas, it's a strata building, and so we have committed with each other that, hey, look, we're going to try and hopefully, if we can get past all the bylaws and AGMs, install a charger at each and every one of their buildings. One of them actually, we've said, look, we will put our hand in our pocket and actually pay for that, you know. So we are happy to come to the party as much as anyone else. For a little bit there with EVCA launching, we lived in our unit in Newstead, so it's literally a stone's throw away from Tesla, and I had to wake up at 6 a.m. on most days, quickly drive, park my car, rush back, take a shower, and then drive back and get my car out. Because by the time it was 7:38, it's chockers, right? And I have to go drop off my daughter at school and yada, yada, yada. So we know that stratas, apartment buildings, that's probably a really big opportunity to get more EV infrastructure in there. We're talking to a building in Barradine in Victoria, and unfortunately, because it's an older building, they're having to fork out an extra $80,000 just for infrastructure upgrades. And that's a lot of the hesitation with strata buildings, apartment buildings, is the infrastructure is so old, and then everyone goes, well, if we pay $80,000, what's going to happen to our monthly contributions? So it is it's a bit of a tricky situation, but we are happy to support apartment buildings as well.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dave.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Cheers. 1974 Lotus Europa.
Yeah, you got a history lesson.
I had to look it up. I'll go and reset the mic.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name's Nathan. For those who don't know me, I often get up here on a... Go for it. I want one of these. You'll see why in a moment. So yeah, I usually get up here and talk to you about what's going on in the sales market, who's buying what kind of vehicles have recently launched it. But I'm putting that and my consulting work and whatever else aside for a second, and I'm going to talk to you about a project that I'm doing. You might recall I went and bought the Honda E from the UK a little while back, about 12 months ago now, and imported that and went through that whole process of importing an EV and putting it on the road, and still, to my knowledge, it's the only one in Queensland. And that whole process of doing that, going through that process was really, really good fun. And so, doing it is as much fun as actually owning it and having it afterwards. So anyway, I have always had a hankering for having one of these, and a lot of people look at that car and go, oh, it's either ugly, looks like a frog, or whatever. It's also been affectionately known as the bread van, because it's kind of got this big back end on it. But my grandfather made one of those, rebuilt one of those when I was a young fella, and I've got pictures of me at about 6 years old, sitting next to his, and so it was a bit of a thing there where, okay, I want to get one of these, and I want to restore it, and I want to electrify it. So if you move on for me, I'll give you a very brief history of the Europa. So Lotus was pretty big in the 60s and 70s, won world championships in Formula One and other racing, and they were a pretty big name in making sports cars around the place. So when Ford decided, when the Ford company and Henry Ford II wanted to beat Ferrari, everybody seen that movie? Great movie. They went to market, and they went to Lola, and they went to Lotus, and they said, hey, I need you to build a car that's going to compete with and beat Ferrari. They went with the GT40, and the history was made. But this car was the alternative car. The Lotus Europa was the alternative car, and folklore has it the only reason they didn't choose the Lotus was because Lotus wanted the name Lotus in the title of the name. So Ford GT40, LOL is nowhere to be seen. If they were going to use the name, the Lotus vehicle, Colin Chapman wanted to have Lotus in the title. So that's kind of where it was originally from with the original designer, and kind of morphed on, so we'll go to the next one, kind of morphed on into let's actually make that and sell some. So the Series 1 was a really super duper lightweight, kind of crazy, very focused car, and they didn't build very many of them. There's only a couple of hundred cars, but it didn't even have winding windows. You can kind of see the window there. It's a fully plexiglass and pop-out window. So there's only a few of those, left-hand drive only. And we'll go to the next one. And so this one is where it became a little bit more popular. The Series 2, they started making left and right-hand drive ones. They started selling them around the world, and started life with the higher haunches and all the rest of it. And the car is, and we'll see some more pictures inside, but it's a mid-rear engine. So that's why there's a big lump in the back there, is because that's where the engine gearbox lives. And this had a 1500cc Renault engine in it. So it was in about 80 horsepower, that kind of ballpark. Weighed about 650 kilos. If we go on to the next one, they started to bring out the twin cam, where you can kind of see the back of the car changed a little bit here. They took a little bit of a sculpting away from it. They put a twin cam engine in it, about 120, 125 horsepower. And then if you flick it against once for me, they finally finished up with the special. And my car's that era. It's a late car, 74, 75, and so my car's quite late on in the process, and so there's a couple of good things around for the electrification. It's a bit bigger in the cabin because it's a bit hard to get into. It's a long way down. I mean, it's 40 inches off the ground, right? It's under a metre high, the whole car. So getting down and into it's a bit more challenging. As they got on, they kind of made it a little bit more comfortable for larger gentlemen in the seat. So they dropped the floor a little bit and they moved the seat back a little bit more space and leg room and so on. But I did test drive a car, a Series 2, before I went and bought a car, because it's a bit like shoes, right? They can look pretty, but if they don't fit, they're no good. And so I needed to go and drive the car to see if I could fit into it. So thankfully I did, and I test drove a car up on the Sunshine Coast, and didn't choose to buy that one. I chose to buy the one I did. So we'll flick on to the next one. So, bit of a vision. What do I want to do here? What is the point of this project? I want to, it'll be light blue, because that's I like blue cars. And it's actually going to be this colour over here, Caribbean Pearl, which is an Aston Martin colour, which of the similar era, and that harks back to my time, 7 years at Aston Martin in the UK. I really want to keep it as close to its curb weight, so it's a 710 kilo car, this car, and about 1,000 kilo gross mass. So I'd like to keep it at about right on that. Kind of not to race circuits or go forever, but be a bit of a hill climb or sprint race, 1 minute, 2 minute lap kind of stuff. I'd really like to get the cruising consumption to be at 100 watt hours per kilometre or 10 kilowatt hours per 100. It's a stretch task, but it's possible, I think, particularly with how low and how light it is. I think, cruising would be able to achieve that. And about a 20 kilowatt hour battery to get me about 200 Ks. Those are the kind of ballparks I'm looking for. It'll need to be a 350 volt system. I'd like to have CCS2 DC charging so that we can use all those wonderful chargers we've been seeing so many of. There's more chargers than you can poke a stick at the moment. So I'm just wondering when John's going to give up chasing them all, but he is the plug seeker. And I've thought about this a little bit. We've seen a couple of cars come in here, particularly from James and others, where a Hyper 9, a motor goes onto a gearbox, a typical gearbox. And this car's got and you'll see some pictures of it in a moment, a transaxle gearbox. I don't trust it. I think it's going to break. It's 50 years old, and I don't think it's going to be able to deal with it. So I'm expecting to take the big leap going to a Tesla drive unit, and it could be the Model S small drive unit, or it could be the Model 3 unit, and we'll have a look at some of that. And I really like to use some of the really top-end stuff from AEM, so you might have seen those in different places if you're into this sort of stuff, but they've got a whole suite of gear to run electric vehicles, and one of the AEVA members down in Sydney is a bit of on the inside of that sort of stuff, so I'm going to work with him on some of that. And have the dash be, I mean, this car is not going to be original. It is going to be, the whole dashboard's going to be carbon and digital, and obviously the back end of it is going to be all electric. So that's kind of where I'm aiming for. Let's see what it looks like though. This is the current status. So about 2 months ago, I stuck it on a trailer and brought it to my place. And in the process of bringing it to my place, I had someone ask me before, where are you doing all this work? So I had this area concreted, I built this lean-to shed on the side of my house, and I'm now trying to do it in the car is 1,600 millimetres wide, and this area here is 2,400 millimetres wide. So I'm trying to build it in the tightest of spots. But there's a bit of work to do. You can see here all the parts that came in the car because it was already stripped. The folks that imported it from the US, it's a left-hand drive US car, they did all the strip on it, and then they kind of got bored of the project. Happens all the time with projects, and I said, oh cool, I'll take that, no problem. So all the bits are there, mostly, doors and stuff like that. My wife has nicknamed it Rusty. Now it's fiberglass, right? So, where's all the rust? But you can kind of see under here, there's a lovely hue of brown. Anyway, got the body up and the chassis out from underneath it last weekend. And I'm sporting a lovely beard, and for those who know me, they know I don't have a beard, so that's to cover up the injury that I have on my top lip, where I was pulling a piece of rusty metal out of the door hinge area the other week, and I smacked myself a week ago, and smacked myself in the face and got 2 stitches. So, the car is already, 1, me, 0. You can see here, engine lives up the front here, the twin cam engine, the chassis at the front here, and then this is the transmission in the back here. So that's kind of the landscape of what we're trying to deal with. There's a big area in the back here you can get into. So when we're talking about putting batteries and putting motors, we can put them right up ahead at the top there. So, but there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of restoration first. If we go on to the next slide there. This is where start to think about, where are we going to put all these things? And I know there's a couple of designers and folks in the room who are interested in this stuff. So these are the concepts. Big old chunk of space. They're actually whipped the fuel tanks out. You can see the fuel tank fillers at the top here. There's twin fuel tanks. I whipped them out over the weekend as well. So there's plenty of space in there. And it's all forward. It's right up in the centre of the car. It's right up at the firewall. So there's lots of great opportunity to bring the weight to the middle of the car. And, centralised weight and as low in the body as possible will make all the difference. And then we'll have a look in a moment just about what does it look like to drop a motor in the back there. So I'll flick to the next one, because thankfully there's a few people out there who have been playing with CAD drawings for this. Now I'm an engineer, but I've never done really CAD in any great way. But I've used a few people, including Francisco in the room, our Italian friend, who's not here tonight unfortunately, because we were going to play with this stuff together. But we've been working on trying to see, does it fit. There's a bit of an idea looking straight up the back of the car, and this is a Model 3 motor. So the 2 big mounting points at the top, and there's another mounting point in the middle here. This is all kind of lined up and go, it kind of fits. And we'll flick to the next slide, and you can kind of start to see how it will fit in space. So this is kind of where I'm at, starting to think about, does it fit? What would it take? The chassis is kind of a C section, so it's firm on the outside, and the top and the bottom come in, and there's a bit of a gap in here. And it just so happens that the mounting points probably just right to slide up in that C section, and so then basically placing mounting plates, welding mounting plates into here that it could come back onto, and then some sort of other mounting plate at the front there. You could use the Model 3 mounting plates in space. I've also done this for the small drive unit that comes out of a Model S, and there's some advantages to that too. But these are more prolific. You know, we've got more Model 3s than and Model Ys, same motor as well, right? So then you can poke a stick at out there at the moment, and they're being written off, unfortunately, pretty rapidly. So there's plenty of stock to work with, and I think that's another good point of this. I've also done the same work with a Nissan Leaf stack, and I've had to think about, from my efficiency point of view, an Ioniq stack. But we all know these guys make good stuff, and the world, you know, I don't know, started through this process, started to have a look at all the hot rodding and so on of people. I was even looking at that. Has anybody seen the Teslonda? I saw some videos of the Teslonda. It's a couple of years old now, but the guy who's done this to an old Honda Accord in the US, it's bonkers. The thing just smokes. It's a smoke show. I don't want this car to be a smoke show, but there's so many bits out there now about controllers, and even, you know, this doesn't come with an LSD in it, but you can put a limited slip diff in this motor quite easily, and then, you know, you'll have a bit more traction across the rear axle. So there's a lot of work to go here, but, you know, this is kind of where I think we'll end up going. I just need to convince the engineer I'm working with that this is all kosher, and I think we can. Bit of a weird suspension system for anybody who's kind of into cars and stuff, a trailing arm suspension system. Biggest challenge here is the drive shaft is actually the upper strut, or the upper link. So I have to build in an extra upper link so I can use CV joints to run off the motor. The gearbox becomes a load bearing in the standard car, becomes a load bearing point, and the drive shaft is actually the upper link rod. Bit techie. I'll keep moving.
Is that actually going to work?
It has already worked on other vehicles. Yeah. So, kind of the key challenges is exactly that is choosing a motor and fitting it. That's another part. The suspension bit's a major part of that process. Battery selection, I think I've just found them. I really love this. This is cool, very cool. And so I'll just take a whole bunch of modules, stack them all up and stick them in there. You know, I've got even this concept of like keeping the weight down, and I've talked to James about this at Traction EV, is, well, why can't I just make a carbon? You can buy sheets of carbon, right? Why can't I make a carbon box? Why do I need to use an aluminium box? I need to speak to people who know what they're talking about on that sort of stuff. But up here, it's kind of going round and round. And, you know, as with all of these sorts of projects, we need the time and money to do them. So I'm working on the money because I'm going to sell the Honda over the course of the next 3 months or so, and that'll help liberate some funds, and then that just brings me the time, which is always a challenge. I could sell the Model 3 instead of the Honda, but I reckon the Honda's probably more fetching. And so we'll go to the last one. So really, you know, the major part here, nice little cutaway, I love a cutaway. Major part here is really, you know, getting that body, you know, put the electrical concepts away for a little while, get the body blasted. I've got to get the chassis blasted. I've got to strip it all down. I've got to rebuild the suspension, the bits that I do need to rebuild, and think about the bits I've got to change. Go again, Les. Got to work with the engineer. So one of the first things is actually left-hand to right-hand drive. I've got all the data and all the presentation from somebody else in Queensland who's done this before. So I just need to follow the rules. I've already got the steering rack and so on to do the work. So that's not impossible. The motor and suspension modifications, which we talked about, are a big thing, but it's pretty close to standard. So if I keep it pretty close to standard, I think most people will be pretty comfortable with that. There's a lot out there that are pretty wild. There's a gentleman who I'd love to see come here, who I went and bought a Model 3 brake booster. So I have a Model 3 i-booster ready to go in this, which I'm planning to use. And he's building an amazing Jag. It's down in the south side of Brisbane. And you should see what he's done to the rear suspension on that. So mine's pretty stock compared to what he's going on there. And, you know, it'll go on the road soon enough. And then obviously, you know, working through those general electrification aspects. So I've read all the bits and pieces, and there's a guideline document and so on. So we just all got to, you know, get a lot of knowledge and get a lot of practice and work through that. And then just finally, there's this, you know, really start finding some parts. So at this stage, I don't have a battery choice in place, but, you know, by the time I get there, a couple of years away, whatever it is, it's like, right, let's find some batteries. And I think I just did, and you know, and other things like, you know, cooling systems for batteries and management systems for, you know, BMS through that CCS2 thing. There is a CCS2 system that's out there, but it's flaming expensive. So it's £4,000 for the zero EV CCS2 system that goes onto the Orion BMS. That's a lot of money. We don't need to be doing that sort of money, but we can find the right level. So it's a bit of a project. I thought I'd share it with you. It's going to happen over probably, I'd love to get it done by its 50th birthday, but that's only about 16 months away. So I'll do my best. Might keep it in the year of 2024, but that's what it looks like.
I've got a question.
Questions?
When your bread ban is finished, what brand bread will you sell?
Well, I'm a gluten-free person, so I'll find a good brand of gluten-free bread. It's not Tip Top. No.
Wonderful.
Any other questions? Or chat afterwards because it's getting late. There we go. Thank you for indulging me and my little Lotus.
All right, it's getting on, so we'll probably wrap up for a social chat, tea and coffee, and tonight, to maintain this physique, I brought chocolate Tim Tams and caramel Tim Tams. So. No, I had too many iced Ovos last week. I had my monthly share. So, all right, thank you very much. Thank you to the speakers.